system that just ain't right. Gonna tear it down, gonna start a fight. Anarchy and numbers is my game. I'm the investor with no shame. Greed and corruption, that's the name of the game they play. It's all a shame. I won't play by their rules, I won't comply. Anarchy's the way. It's time to fly. I'll burn down the walls and break the chains.
And here we go. Welcome. I am Matt. This is the Anarchist Investor live, coming at you every Monday through Friday at noon Eastern, talking about contrarian investment, markets, the economy, how to protect and grow your money without it getting stolen by some dirty, dirty banksters. And we're talking about that just today. A reminder at the top of the show, like the banner says, please do me a favor. Give me a thumbs up, a subscribe, a like, a follow, a share of this post and this broadcast. Let me know how you're doing down in the comments. Let me know how the economy is working or not working for you, like most people out there, unless you're like in the top 10%, maybe even just the top 1%. Definitely head on over to anarchistinvestor.substack.com. Earlier today, I wrote an article on, what did I write it on today? Oh yeah, don't leave your job. The unemployment picture is starting to look really, really treacherous. If you got a job, hold on to it with both hands, especially if you need it. And now more than ever is probably a good time to pick up a side hustle too. So head over there, give me a free subscribe. And this month but to be eligible, you have to be a subscriber this month, because June 3rd, I will be giving away 4 1-year paid memberships to the Anarchist Investor. That will give you access to the model portfolio that I'm piecing together and will be putting out there, and only you as a paid subscriber will be able to get access to that one. So definitely keep an eye out for that, and head on over there and throw a free subscribe in there. Just takes your email. And if you're, listening or watching to this and you're not a subscriber on anarchistinvestor.substack.com, definitely do that, because you got to be in it to win it. All right, what are we talking about today? On the hold screen, I have Bitcoin Cash. Why are we talking about Bitcoin Cash today? I thought the title was talking about privacy coins. Well, interestingly enough, let me get rid of this banner. Interestingly enough, Bitcoin and crypto in general, its ethos, its beginnings, its genesis is what we're talking about today. And we're talking about some of the most recent news articles, specifically the indictment of Roger Ver, who is known as Bitcoin Jesus, former CEO of Bitcoin.com. So we're going to get into that. I'm not really going to talk about the markets too much today. It's continuing, the casino at least is continuing to have some upside momentum following the, Fed rate pause, wink, wink, even though they're cutting back on the quantitative tightening. There was a video put out over the weekend by Eurodollar University, and he actually kind of poked holes in the idea that quantitative tightening as well as rate changes have a direct and immediate effect in the marketplace. And I would agree. But my position is that the Federal Reserve is basically just a signaling mechanism, a psychology experiment, if you will, and in line with the uneducated economist and Simon's continued reference to the credible threat theory. So, but that being said, the broader casino is up today a bit. There's continued hopes for a rate cut, and I would argue the rate cut is coming. It's just not for good reasons. It's going to be for really bad reasons. And a la the article earlier this morning, it'll probably be because the unemployment picture is going to get ugly really quickly, which is typically what happens. And the inflation numbers, these, unexpectedly high inflation numbers will not be high. In fact, they might even throw in some negatives in the near future. We'll see, but that would be my anticipation. All right, so let me pull down Bitcoin Cash, because we're going to talk about this case with Roger Ver. And before I open up news articles, I want to talk about just the general, beginnings of crypto. Okay. Most people who are at least a little bit familiar with crypto understand at least some, if not all, of the benefits of crypto. Okay. Peer to peer money was originally the intent. Okay. It was a high trust system because the old system that a lot of people are still trapped in, uses intermediaries who are supposed to be trusted, which, by the way, have lost a lot of the public trust as of recently. They should have lost it a long time ago, but they take their VIG and they kind of centralize the processing of transactions so that there's things like non-duplicating. There's this issue in banking, right? In traditional banking markets where someone could potentially spend the same dollar twice, and they don't want that to happen, right? They want authentication that whatever currency was dedicated towards that first transaction, that's the only transaction it's been dedicated to. That transfer of the currency or that value happens, and then you move on to the next one, right? They don't want double entries as far as the same dollar or the same unit of money is concerned. Well, crypto solves that. Okay. Now, interestingly enough, there's also this element of essentially anonymity that was originally intended in the crypto space. And the reason being is that crypto is essentially code, right? And that code to a certain extent can be tracked, but there's only very limited, if done correctly, there's very limited ways that code can be attributed to an individual or an organization that is making the transaction on either side. All right. So peer to peer, decentralized, fast, low fee structure, disintermediated or decentralized. All these amazing promises. Okay. And Bitcoin is the most notable, I'll call it, brand, okay, in the crypto space. Well, that is becoming something that is falling apart. And the reason why it's falling apart is because the search for wealth, unfortunately, has led a number of people within the crypto space to abandon the philosophical beginnings of these cryptocurrencies and blockchain technology. That being said, there will always be offshoots of these types of technologies, right? Blockchains, there are open source blockchains and completely, decentralized or mutually owned blockchains. There's also private blockchains, right? JP Morgan and a lot of the banking cartel members are starting their own blockchains, but those are not like the true essence of what it is to be blockchain. Those are essentially internal ledgers that provide transparency for like just the people who are on the inside, right? Everyone outside of that ledger isn't going to be able to gain access. They won't be able to look at that blockchain and that data. The truly open transaction ledger that is or was intended to be Bitcoin, to a certain extent, was sold out. Okay. But one of the originators, someone who is not a founding, kind of person in the Bitcoin world, but one of the very first adopters, was a gentleman by the name of Roger Ver. All right. Roger's relatively young, and he's still young compared to me anyway. I'm in my 40s and I consider myself an old fart as a result of it. But Roger Ver was relatively young when he started, and he got into Bitcoin very early. Okay. And so when he originally started getting to Bitcoin, it was still in the like couple hundred. I think at one point in time, there's some filings that say, a lot of his Bitcoin holdings were at basically $800, you know. But he essentially got a large stake in the original, first few Bitcoin that were minted. And as a result of it, and because of his, let me say, evangelism of Bitcoin, he was known as Bitcoin Jesus because he would talk to groups and get people excited about Bitcoin and crypto currency and blockchain technology, and people ate it up and they loved it. And so he was looked at as somewhat of a, a figurehead, not just a figurehead, but kind of like a guru of sorts within the Bitcoin community. Well, recently, and this article is dated, or not article, but this entry at the Department of Justice is dated Tuesday, April 30th of this year, and it's entitled Early Bitcoin Investor Charged with Tax Fraud. Okay. Roger Ver, a number of years ago, expatriated. In fact, he didn't even just expatriate. I believe he renounced his U.S. citizenship and became a citizen of St. Kitts and Nevis. And obviously, this is for tax reasons. All right. Now, the United States, Uncle Sam wants its money, right? Uncle Sam is basically the mob, right? Like they need their vig, right? Like they want their take. And so they don't just allow you to leave the country with your assets. Um, not if it's recordable and trackable and everything like that, right? Well, in an attempt to be above board, Roger has tax attorneys and accountants file basically a final, not a final return, but essentially a return before he renounces his citizenship and becomes a citizen of St. Kitts and Nevis, and he pays a boatload of tax on his Bitcoin holdings. Now, they estimate that he had possession of over 131,000 Bitcoin. At today's present value, that's something like over $7 billion. All right. When he reported it, they're alleging that they're alleging that he reported less Bitcoin than he was actually holding. Okay. Now, you have to understand that this is going to be hashed out in court unless, of course, they can come to some kind of understanding. In a lot of cases, regardless of guilt, okay, this typically amounts to a shakedown, right? And so Roger was actually arrested in Spain and then expatriated to the United States. And so this is something that people within the Bitcoin community need to really pay attention to, because this is extremely dangerous, because Bitcoin, if it's to be money, or even if it's to be gold and silver, which is technically actual money, okay? Why in the F would you pay taxes on money, right? On monetary transactions. If all Roger did was buy Bitcoin, he's essentially exchanging one currency for another. That's typically not a taxable event. Okay. Now, there are such things as capital gains tax if, say, like you're speculating on Forex, right? Like on the Forex markets, if you're a currency trader, technically there are capital gains that are associated with that. All right. But in the philosophical sense, all he did was exchange US currency for a cryptocurrency. Okay. In many states, exchanging US currency for gold and silver is a non-taxable event. All right. When you do finally exchange that gold and silver back into US currency, I mean, technically that's also supposed to be a non-taxable event, but again, it depends on the state. All right. These are federal charges because it has to do with the IRS. And so they're alleging that he didn't report as many Bitcoin as he did. Now, remember, it's not him filling out the forms. He has other people that are filling out these forms for him. So is this something that he, specifically omitted? Is it something that they overlooked? I don't know. But what this is going to be, and there's been a couple of cases in the past as well. These are going to be people that are made example of, because in many cases, they're the most outspoken. In many cases, they're the most notable. You have the Crypto Six up in New Hampshire just recently, a number of which have been hit with jail time as a result of essentially running ATMs and supposedly running some kind of tax scam or tax evasion scam, when truthfully, at the end of the day, they use the IRS's own tax code. Okay. And to the letter of that code, they abided by it. And then retroactively, the IRS came back after them and the Department of Justice, and they basically said that, no, you were, abusing the tax code, as if fucking ExxonMobil and Apple doesn't abuse the tax code on the regular, right? The difference is that these individuals are being made an example of. And the reason why they're being made an example of is because of what cryptocurrency is actually supposed to be. It's supposed to be decentralization. It's supposed to be able to create parallel economies to what is the dollar-based economy that most normies live in. All right. And that is scary to people that are into power and influence because they don't want you to have an alternative because they're worried that you'll choose it, that you'll exit the system. Okay. Um, Furthermore, to the point that they're trying to discredit Roger Ver is when you look at most of these articles, what they do is they allude to an earlier charge before he left the United States. I believe it dates back to 2014. And if I can find it in the article here, they basically say that in the past, he was found guilty of selling on eBay, of all places. Okay, you got to remember, this guy understands Bitcoin, all right? And he's selling on eBay something called, and they allude to it as explosives. Okay. You have to remember, this is the corporate press. These are the enemy of the people because they lie. But the way that they lie is they do it by hedging to say, well, oh, well, this, that, and the other thing refers to it as an explosive. So that's what I refer to it as. But they're always going to pick the most incendiary, incriminating terminology. Okay. If it fits their desired ends. All right. So he sold an explosive, quote unquote, on eBay called Pest Control Report 2000. All right. A reminder, please help me with the algo, especially if you're watching on the new YouTube channel. Help me with the algo. Give me a thumbs up and a sub because they don't like when I talk like this. What is Pest Control 2000? Okay. And they're mentioning this to try and tell you, oh, he's a career criminal. He's a problem case, right? Like he doesn't abide by the law. Okay. Well, it's not C4. It's not a stick of TNT. Okay. It's something called pest control. Pest Control Report 2000. Okay. When you go through and you look, okay, Pest Control Report 2000, and I looked on Brave specifically because I wanted to see if there was like a kind of no BS explanation of this. And the very first entry on Brave is the Pest Control Report 2000 was a type of firecracker sold to consumers despite being illegal to sell due to its explosive content. Okay. What is it actually used for? It's used by basically farmers, ranchers, and growers for the purposes of legitimate pest control. Essentially, they set this thing off and it scares, it's a very big concussion, and it scares away deer and pigs and other kinds of varmint and stuff like that that might ruin a crop or ruin a planting area. Okay. But in CNBC and the Associated Press, because most of these articles all just copy and paste what the AP puts out there, use the word explosive as if this is like, 9/11 level kind of crap that this guy was trying to sell on eBay of all places. Okay. He's so stupid that he's selling explosives on eBay, right? Which means this is either one trumped up to begin with, or it's like a legitimate like mistake on his part. Okay. I'm erring on the side of Rogers because he's not stupid. Okay. This guy is freaking intelligent enough to be able to get into Bitcoin and see the value of it early on. All right. Yeah, you could say he's lucky, but if you've ever heard him talk, he's not stupid. Okay. But so this is the narrative. Okay. The big bad Bitcoin guy didn't pay $50 million in taxes or $48 million in taxes. He's a tax evader, and he's also selling illicit materials on eBay. On eBay, right? So he spent 10 months in prison for that. They're trying to create this narrative. Okay. Now, what's also very interesting of the timing of all of this is Roger just recently authored a book called Hijacking Bitcoin. All right. And hijacking Bitcoin speaks to anyone who's kind of followed this story a little bit understands that at a certain point, Bitcoin hard forks. And if you're not familiar with blockchain technology, blockchain is literally kind of like a data chain, right? And then you can hard fork from that chain. And basically it can, use the original chain. And then at one point in time, that one chain then has like a side chain that basically moves off of it onto its own kind of thing. So its legacy was the original, right? Its legacy was Bitcoin, but then it moves off. I've talked about this in the past in reference to Bitcoin Cash, which is what I had on the hold screen, as well as BSV, Bitcoin Gold, and a couple of others. Hive is a hard fork from the Steemit blockchain. Okay. So these things happen. Roger was one of the people that was involved in essentially the hard fork that happened because a number of folks identified one, what the issues were with the original iteration of Bitcoin, because originally it was supposed to be, anonymous transactions. It was supposed to be, no third parties, basically decentralized, and it was supposed to be low fee and fast, right? These things began to break down as Bitcoin's value began to grow and grow and grow. And in fact, I think a lot of crypto people specifically are going to have to come to the realization that cryptocurrencies themselves, to actually be effective, have very little to do with one of the coins becoming wildly valuable, at least in a short period of time. Okay. That coin might become more valuable over a long period of time. But truthfully, at the end of the day, your ability to accumulate the coins and the tokens should probably be more prioritized than the actual value of each individual unit, because each one of those individual units is technically supposed to be used for transactional value. And it loses its transactional value if it becomes too big and if the fees become too high, which is what happened with Bitcoin. It was efficient and it continues, or sorry, it was inefficient for that use case, and it continues to be so, which is why most Bitcoin people, most Bitcoin maxis have shifted to this narrative that Bitcoin is digital gold or whatever. Okay. I'll actually make the point maybe later this week in one of my writings on the newsletter that to me, Bitcoin makes more sense as digital art, right? And I'll talk about that more in the future. But um, to stay on this storyline, Roger was part of the hard fork that happened in Bitcoin, and he did not stick with the legacy Bitcoin. He wanted the more efficiency, the higher throughput, the lower fee structure. Okay, and so he went with those projects. Specifically, he talked a lot about Bitcoin Cash as well as, I believe, BSV. And so he writes this book in close proximity to these things happening. And so it's very coincidental that all of a sudden he writes this book that kind of blows the roof off of how Bitcoin has become hijacked and essentially centralized. And if you've listened to any of his interviews and things like that since he wrote the book and came out and he started talking about it, there are a lot of Bitcoin historians who are basically saying that his retelling of what happened when there was kind of this internal civil war is extremely accurate. Okay. And it's not biased. Okay. I will have to do a full review of this book on this channel. Um, but it's a retelling of what happened at that point in time, and it's a retelling of why Bitcoin is no longer what it was originally intended to be when Satoshi Nakamoto wrote the white paper. Okay. Regardless of who Satoshi is, what Bitcoin was originally supposed to be in that white paper, it's failing at that. And so a lot of people, Roger included, jumped ship and they moved over to things like, now it doesn't mean that they liquidated all of their Bitcoin holdings, but it meant that they reshifted their focus to things like Bitcoin Cash and BSV and Bitcoin Gold, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. Um, and so this guy is being made an example of. And the reason why I wanted to do this episode today and talk about this is because there is uh this there's this effect that's happening within the crypto space where a handful of people are still trying to stay true to the essence of what is crypto. What is crypto? What is blockchain technology? What is the true, identity less transactions that can still have a high level of trust, right? But then there's a huge number of people that are basically being in some cases they're being bribed, and in other cases they're just being lured like a moth to the flame to these huge outsized gains and promises of wealth. All right. And part of understanding where Bitcoin is going to go and where crypto is going to go as a technology, and as the use cases continue to rise, is understanding what the use cases are and the inspiration behind them. Right? Shitcoins are really easy to understand. Okay. They're shitcoins because someone is just trying to capitalize on the tulip mania and they're just trying to cash out. They know how to make a crypto, they know how to hype it up, and they just want to steal people's money. Right? That's basically the nature of shitcoins. Same thing with meme coins. Because you could make the argument that, oh, well, buyer beware, right? Like the greater fool theory. If you're stupid and if you think that this crypto is going to the moon just because of the hype or because it has a cool name or the logo's awesome or whatever, okay? If that's what you think is going to happen, well, then you're going to take your hard earned assets and exchange them for that crypto. If I know that that's bullshit, but I take your assets, well, that's on you, right? Like that's the buyer beware theory, okay? There are other cryptos out there that are legitimately trying to hold true to the original intent and the true power of crypto in terms of being this revolutionary idea. Roger Roger poked the bear, continues to poke the bear. And so we're going to see how this thing hashes out. Hopefully what happens is it just ends up being the extortion that most people think it is. And I mean, you could draw whatever conclusion you want in terms of whether or not he gives in and cuts a check to get them to shut up and go away, right? Or whether or not he does spend some time in prison because he sticks to his guns and they want to continue making an example out of it. But I think most people that are in the crypto space, if you're more than just a casual person in the crypto space, you need to take note of this because they will come for you. If you attempt to use crypto for something other than the normie ways that these people who control the centralized systems want you to use it, then they're going to come for you. Okay. And so this is something that everyone needs to be prepared for. And they're going to find whatever they need to in order to have an impetus to try and come after you. Okay. So now if you're not hardcore, that means that you need to know your shit. You need to have an accountant that knows how to handle this stuff. And you know what? I won't fault you if you go ahead and report it and you pay your taxes like a good little tax slave. Most people do. I pay taxes too. Okay. I'm not going to say on what or what the methodology is there. I can just tell you that I pay taxes. All right. But what I'm saying to the grander population is even if that is you, even if you're a good little boy or girl and you pay your taxes to Uncle Sam, when push comes to shove and they decide to shut this down, okay? Because it will come. If they can't take it over completely, the day will come where they will criminalize holding a certain type of crypto or on a certain type of exchange because you have to remember that part of the way, actually the biggest way that they've been able to infiltrate Bitcoin and essentially neuter it in terms of it being a blockchain and a crypto technology is to centralize a lot of the transactions onto exchanges. And if you've noticed, a lot of the exchanges that in the beginning started as non KYC, non know your customer exchanges, they have now caved because the feds basically told them that they would either put them out of business or they'd put them in prison if they didn't do that. And so now, what was meant to be this anonymous peer-to-peer transaction technology has become the complete antithesis to that. It's just become a new digital way to transact money, and the value of that money, is relative based off of the interest of the people that are buying and selling it. And what have you gained? Right? Like, what's the difference between and this is actually in one of Rogers. I think he appeared on Anarchast, Anarchast, I believe is the way you spell it, Anarchast. If you look it up on YouTube, it's absolutely fantastic. Patrick does an amazing job as one of the hosts on Anarchast, and Roger did an interview, and he basically said, you know, at some point, once you centralize Bitcoin and Ethereum and some of these other technologies onto these centralized exchanges that all have know your customer policies in place, he's like, what have you gained? You haven't really gained anything. There's no efficiency gain or anything like that because you're having to use an intermediary. The fees go up because the regulation goes up. Okay. And it could just be a different, like, it might be a transaction fee, or it could just be that vig, that spread that you pay between your, the buy and the sell, that ends up going to the actual platform, to the exchange operator, right? But those costs go up. And so you've lost. Why not just use PayPal? Why not just use Venmo or something else? They're going to be able to track you anyway. You're going to have to report it anyway. There's going to be taxation. The fees are going to go up. It's going to be fast only if they allow it to be fast, right? What have you gained? Nothing, right? Well, interestingly enough, Roger raised these alarm bells, and now they're shaking him down. And he's not the first, he won't be the last. All right. So this is also something for all of you who are the Bitcoin maxis that are out there. This is something for you to understand as well, right? Like, if you think this is the investment that's going to make you a billionaire, uh, think of the fact that it's probably, like, if you were buying early in, it's not the same thing that you were buying when you bought early in. And now that you're buying now, you have to ask yourself whether or not Bitcoin still has the same competitive advantage to all the other, payment and monetary systems and things like that that are out there. And I get it. I get it. It has a limited supply. I get it. Okay. But again, you and I probably have a much different interpretation of what crypto is meant to be. I don't see crypto as this thing where you put in $1 and it turns into $1 billion because the Federal Reserve prints a bunch of money and its relative valuation increases. Actually, crypto to me is a freeing technology that is basically a new form of cash, and cash doesn't appreciate like that. Okay. Now, my ability to earn more of those tokens because the Federal Reserve prints cash and because more people are moving their money into the blockchain, and the blockchain, as a result of it, rewards that activity in terms of the creation of more. I mean, like, for me, money should inflate based off of the production of the system that money is derived from. And if that money is derived from, perfect example being Hive, if that money is derived from activity, actual activity, not speculative activity where people are just trading that currency back and forth, but actual activity, interaction, the posting of information, the cataloging of data, actual transactions for goods and services and things like that. If that currency inflates with a dependable, understandable um, connection with the actual productivity of that underlying blockchain, that underlying system, I think that's the ideal cryptocurrency, not one that has a finite supply, and then the biggest claim to fame is that it's a finite supply. A finite supply of what? Right? Like, what are you buying? Is there actually commerce happening related to that cryptocurrency and in that cryptocurrency? I mean, the very nature of the hodlers is a self-defeating process because everyone thinks, oh, well, and I'm kind of like giving away the headline here in terms of the article that I'm going to write. But I mean, it's nothing more than buying and hoarding a Monet, right? You're just putting it in the back. I mean, maybe you put it on display or whatever. Most people that have Bitcoin, most of the whales, they're not putting their Bitcoin on display unless they're like Roger and being open and talking about it out in the media, right? But at the end of the day, if all you do is hodl, you never spend it, you never get rid of it, you never realize the gain. I mean, that's essentially what you're doing. You're locking value into something that becomes less and less liquid over time. So yeah, you're a billionaire, but can you ever sell? Right? Like, that's the other question. Can you actually ever get out from under it? I guess we're going to find that out in the future. But from that standpoint, and from the standpoint of this story, there is a big selling point here for privacy coins that are out there, being Monero and Pirate Chain. Okay. Those are the two biggest ones that I know of. If there are others besides those two, please put them into the comments. Let me know, regardless of whether or not you're on the live or if you're um, watching or listening to the recorded version of this. But those are the two biggest ones. And yes, they're not amazing investments. So if I scroll down here, actually, I have to open the right window. If I scroll down here and I open up Monero, okay, over a long, timeline, Monero is, at best sideways if you bought near the low. But really, I mean, there were, there was one, two big pops. If you bought during these pops, you're down. Okay. And could the value of each Monero go down? Sure. Because at the end of the day, most normie types are not going to flock to something that's a privacy coin. They're going to do business within the system. But again, that's basically defeating the purpose of crypto and blockchain. And so the people that are the purists, the people that are the ones that are really looking for anonymity, they're looking for privacy, they're looking for true decentralization, they're going to flock to other things. Okay. It's part of the reason why I'm a big believer in Hive. Hive has most of those things, and the decentralization gives you some level of protection. Okay. Something else that I didn't highlight in these articles was there was a note about Roger giving up his citizenship and the fact that he still, even though he's not a US citizen anymore, and even though Bitcoin is a digital asset and you could put it on a flash drive, right? And just take it with you, put it on a cold storage wallet, just take it with you anywhere in the world. They made the point that he might still be liable for taxes in the United States every year that he holds on to those Bitcoin because of where they quote unquote originated from, where the original transaction took place. What a load of BS. And yet they'll still continue to stick that to him. All right. There's going to be a push for things like Monero and Pirate Chain. The question is whether or not it's going to be this Bitcoin-esque push. And I'll tell you, it won't be, not at least in the present. Okay. But that doesn't mean that these things shouldn't be a piece of your portfolio. You just have to be understanding that this is going to be transactional crypto. And so it's never going to make you a billionaire. I do not anticipate something like Pirate Chain or Monero is ever going to make anyone from here on out a billionaire. I would not expect, right now Pirate Chain is trading at 35 cents per. Do I think one day it's going to be 350 or $3,500? No, probably not. I mean, if this thing fluctuates in between $1 and $3, it's pretty much, I think it would do its job. If all it did was retain its value, but it gave people its value in terms of dollars, but it gave people the ability to transact in the truest sense of what is Bitcoin, crypto technology and blockchain technology, I think it's a win. But there's a huge case to be made for at least having some of this stuff, because there will come a day where they come for your Bitcoin. There will come a day where they come for your Ethereum, especially if it is what everyone's saying these assets are. And if Bitcoin is digital gold, which again, I don't believe, but remember back in the day, they confiscated gold. Actual gold, they confiscated. A lot of people would be like, oh, I'll just take my Bitcoin with me. Oh, really? To Spain? Where you get arrested and then extradited to the United States? And then you're like, well, I still have my Bitcoin on my flash drive and it's hidden somewhere in a safe space. Oh, that's great. We'll just put you in prison for 30 years so you can never access it. Right? This is the world we live in, folks. It's a world of ideas, and these ideas sometimes are in conflict with people that are much more powerful, influential, and they have contravening ideas that want to make something like this exactly what they want to make it, not what it was intended to be. This is a warning sign. This is a shot across the bow for people in the crypto space. There needs to be a conversation about this, because if left to their own devices, politicians, the law and order types, they will neuter the hell out of crypto, and they will make it something that is, 1/1,000,000th of what it could possibly be. And I'm not talking about the value of each coin. I'm talking about the actual revolutionary technology that it is. And regardless of what your political persuasions are, if you are in favor of freedom and sovereignty and individuality and the ability to do what you want as long as it doesn't negatively impact someone else in a way that affects their ability to do what they want. If you're of that persuasion, you need to be paying attention to this story and the stories like it as they move forward. If you have never heard of it before, look up the Crypto 6. Okay? And you'll see what I'm talking about. They use the tax code. It's just the authorities were pissed off that they were made to look like asses because they allowed it to happen. And so they just used, random arbitrary interpretations of the rules to then create a precedent moving forward so that they didn't even have to write new rules. They just said you used it wrong. And that's why they imprison these guys. People. But this is something to keep in mind. Rest of the market today, again, it's a little bit of an up day, a little bit of a risk on day, and it's all a momentum play. Crypto is actually down today. And so, again, I'm not going to talk too much about like the individual market moves. There's going to be some earnings and some other economic stuff later on this week. I would definitely go over and check out the article that I wrote this morning, especially if you're someone who's thinking about moving jobs, you're unhappy with where you're at, you might need to gut it out. In fact, I'm pretty convinced that you're going to need to gut it out unless you have something that you know for certain you can transition to employment-wise, whether it's a side hustle or another job offer. And another thing to keep in mind is if you work in normie world, if you work in corporate America, a lot of times job offers get pulled. So keep that in mind as well. Times like these, people leave a good job for another job that never ends up becoming a reality. Okay? So you got to be careful. That's all I'm saying. You better creep. Pulling out the TLC references and by proxy the references to the other guys. Which, by the way, in the comments, just like a completely rando thought in the comments. Also, let me know what's your favorite like comedy film. I want to know if you're into comedy films. Let me know what your favorite comedy film is. The Other Guys is one of my favorites, but definitely let me know. Kind of a get to know your audience thing. So with that, that's all I got today. Happy Monday. I'll be back at it tomorrow, Tuesday at noon Eastern, live here as usual. And we'll be talking about what happens in the markets, what comes up tonight into tomorrow. And we'll continue to look at these stories moving forward. So with that, I appreciate all of you. Thank you very much for your time, your energy, your attention. If you could help me with the algo, that would be fantastic. And beyond that, everyone have a happy rest of your Monday, and I will see you tomorrow. Peace.
Stuck in a system that just ain't right. Gonna tear it down. Gonna start a fight. Anarchy and numbers is my game. I'm the investor with no shame. Greed and corruption, that's the name of the game they play. It's all a shame. I won't play by their rules. I won't comply. Anarchy's the way. It's time to fly. I burn down the walls and break the chains. Shatter the illusions. Expose their games. The stock market's a stage. I'll steal the show with my rebellious spirit. Watch me grow. Burn down the walls and break the chains. Shatter the illusions. Expose their games. The stock market's a stage. I'll steal the show with my rebellious spirit. Watch me grow.